Good morning and happy Easter. It is sunrise up here where we usually do the sunrise service, and CJ and I are here alone, and we value this service, and I'm not sure exactly why, but I think there's just been something to coming up here. It's freezing cold and I hate the cold, but there's just something organic about this. There's followers of Jesus that come up here, and you can still consider yourself a Christian and not be here, but there's a unique personality and care of somebody that wants to come up here and listen to a service before a service. And I just have really enjoyed it. So we wanted to bring this to you in some way. So I wanted to spend 10 minutes talking about and thinking through and meditating on the moments before Jesus rose from the dead. Or at the very least, the moments before people knew Jesus rose from the dead. And I wonder what people were thinking and feeling on Saturday, right? Like we have a service that Tom just did on Friday, which is when Jesus was crucified. We have an Easter morning service. We have a sunrise service on Sunday. But what was going on Saturday? I mean, we talk about Wednesday before, right? Just the life of Christ and what was going on. And we talk about Friday, Good Friday, when Jesus was crucified. And we talk about Sunday. And probably Wednesday is more important than Saturday in some senses. And that's probably why we don't know much about what was happening on Saturday. The Bible doesn't talk a lot about what people were doing Saturday. And Friday is more important than Wednesday. And Sunday is more important than Friday, because Paul even says that if Jesus didn't raise from the dead, our faith is in vain. So it makes sense why we talk about Friday and Sunday. But just maybe even uniquely this morning, before our Easter service, we can think about Saturday or Sunday morning before people knew Jesus had risen from the dead. I'm a police officer in the city where our church is, and I remember my first dead body I saw, and it's just like it burned into my brain. It's like my brain involuntarily took pictures and stored them away and burned them into my brain, and I can literally, whenever I want, bring those pictures to my mind, and even when I don't want, they can come to my mind. And I actually can remember every dead body I've seen. I think the majority of first responders are that way. I think the majority of people are that way. That when we see a body that has no life anymore, it's just something we're not used to. It's not normal. The majority of us spend our life around people who are living. We live among the living. We interact with people based on the life, the way their eyes move while they're talking, their body language, their laughter. We can even sense the spirit in people. And when we see the spirit has left someone, we see the body without the life, we remember that. I imagine people have had horrific experiences and they remember every detail of those moments where the spirit, the life has left the body. And many of us realize in that moment that it wasn't the body that we're connected with, it's the person. And there's something separate about that. And I want to spend a moment talking about what people were thinking and feeling after they had seen Jesus murdered, crucified, the most grotesque event the majority of these people had probably ever seen in their life. I mean, it has to be that even the people that knew what it meant when it was said that just as Jonah was in the belly of the whale for 3 days, the people that really understood what tearing down the temple and rebuilding it was like and what it meant and what was being said, what was being taught, what was being pointed to, even the people that understood that, when they saw Jesus crucified, there had to be at least a part of them that thought, nobody's coming back from that. When they saw Jesus Christ, what happened to him, and they watched him take his last breath, that was a time, I believe, when people watching thought, only God can come back from that. And Sunday morning, before people knew Jesus rose, I think one thing that people knew, one thing people thought, was only God could come back from that. And I want to focus on a group of what appears to be around 3 ladies. Sunday morning, nobody knew Jesus had rose from the dead yet. And they are headed to the tomb where Jesus was buried. And they had supplies with them. They didn't have party hats and those New Year's Eve blower whistle things. They didn't have cakes. They didn't have cupcakes. They didn't have a banner that said, "Welcome back. Sin is dead and I'm alive." They didn't have those things. They had spices and things to anoint the dead body of Jesus. They're going to the tomb on the 3rd day, and they have materials to anoint the dead body of Jesus. They expected Jesus to be dead in the tomb. I want to read you some scripture here. This is Mark chapter 15. We're going to read the last verse in Mark chapter 15. And then we're going to read verses 1 through 6 and 16. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, saw where Jesus' body was laid. Saturday evening, when the Sabbath ended, Mary and their friend went to purchase burial spices so they could anoint Jesus' body. Very early on Sunday morning, just at sunrise, they went to the tomb. On the way, they were asking each other, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?" But as they arrived, they looked up and saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled aside. When they entered the tomb, they saw a young man clothed in white robes sitting on the right side. The women were shocked, but the angel said, "Don't be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He isn't here. He is risen from the dead. Look, this is where they laid his body." They went fully expecting on the 3rd day Jesus to be in there dead. But when they got there, an angel of the Lord said that he is risen. He's not here anymore. And I can't imagine what they were thinking. They'd just been told that Jesus had raised from the dead, something only God could have done, he did. Everything he taught, everything he said he would do was happening. The wildfire had started. From here on, the globe would be changed like a spark to dry grass. And I think it was 1871 on October 8th, there was a great fire in Chicago. many of us know the story. It was a horrific fire, actually. The rumor is, or one rumor is, that the fire started by Mrs. O'Leary out in her barn milking her cow by lantern light. And the cow kicks over the lantern, and the lantern starts the barn on fire. Well, it had been so dry and there's a nice little breeze going that the fire just got out of hand. It covered 3.3 square miles, killed around 300 people, made 100,000 residents homeless. Chicago had a bunch of resources for that fire. They just couldn't stop it. They would go to one area and they would be throwing water on it and it'd be taking off in another area. It actually jumped a body of water they didn't think it would go over. They had people coming in from other cities and other jurisdictions to try to help out. They just couldn't stop the fire. That's what happened when Jesus rose from the dead. It took off like a wildfire. It changed the globe. There's secular historians that will not believe that Jesus rose from the dead, but they'll say this, and this is a quote from one of them: something happened because it changed the world. Well, we believe Jesus rose from the dead, did something only God can do. We believe that Jesus Christ took care of sin on the cross for humankind. So, these ladies, they didn't bring cupcakes and party hats. They didn't bring a banner that said, "Welcome back. Sin is dead and I am free." But this morning, you and I can hold that banner. Jesus rose from the dead, and so now sin is dead, and you and I are free.